stakeholders in the global energy industry are concerned about Nigeria's oil and gas sector. Reports indicate that the country's crude reserves are very low. Ummu Ibrahim talked to the director of the Directorate of Petroleum Resources and asked him what the government plans to do to improve investment and also boost production.
Apart from basically what we have really fully articulated in the BIB, which is really still ongoing in terms of discussions at the National Assembly, which hopefully we think should be passed very, very soon. Even before then, there are quite a few things we're trying to put in place. We have been in some part of this road before, and there were some interventions that we actually put in place as a government. And the simplest thing you can do basically is go back and copy from what you did before. So there are interventions we are trying to put in place as some bit of policy reshaping that will help refocus people and attract the investors towards exploring for more oil and gas. Because the issue really is that once you start to see this kind of trend, because our business is so much long-term focused, we're a marathon business, it also takes a long time to come back into that kind of a trend. So we really need to start now.
Now, do you want to take us through some of these policies that you're, looking at?
If you look at in the past, there was a time we actually had specific policy around what we call reserves addition bonus. Now, this is what, again, we're saying, so we're actually, so why don't we look for a policy which you can craft around stopping the decline of reserves, oil and gas reserves in Nigeria. In the past, we had actually put in some kind of incentives for the investors, where they actually earn something by doing something. So at the end of the day, there's a win-win for both parties, both the federal government of Nigeria as well as the investors. So it's the same thinking we're carrying through right now. It's still very much on the workbench, but it should get to government very, very soon.
Oil remains Nigeria's major export commodity, but recent reports reveal that there is a huge decline in the country's crude oil reserves. Now, should Nigeria be concerned about this challenge, particularly at a time when many, sub-Saharan African countries are emerging as exporters and producers of crude oil?
Yes, it is a concern. But I would rather look at it more as an opportunity. And it's both sides of a coin, if you look at it. If you moan around the fact that it is, it's a concern and you don't do anything about it, then really it becomes a huge concern. From where I sit, because we have huge potential, of actually growing our reserves, that's the opportunity for me. And what is standing in between that, it's just investment and basically executing those activities.
Now, your thoughts about the future of, Nigeria's oil and gas industry, how optimistic are you?
Well, you see, like I said, it's a very bright one. If you just put it simply like that, it's a very, very bright future. The simple fact that we're still in the top 11 of resource holding globally just shows that there's a lot in it for us to go for. And don't forget, quite a lot of what we're still claiming today that is even still keeping us within this number, the top 11, it's still due to the fact that we have not even invested enough. So can you imagine if we start really, really investing? Maybe we'll come to the top 8 or even top 5. So that's really the future I'm expecting, and I hope I'll still be alive to see it.
Crude oil theft remains a huge challenge in the Nigerian oil and gas industry. Aside the fact that it affects our revenue generation, it also impacts on the environment hugely. What plans or strategies are there in place to curb this menace?
Well, I hear people talk a lot about the fact that it affects our revenues, which is true. It's a statement of fact, and it is not good. I also hear people talk a lot about the impact on the environment, which is really, really messy, and no doubt about that. But I even worry more about the fact that people die you know, in carrying out these activities, because these are really, really toxic fumes and all sorts of a thing. A lot of people die. You don't get to read that in the newspapers, you know. So that worries me much more, frankly speaking, you know. And that is why all concerted effort, it's not a silver bullet from a particular agency. So it's not just, so everybody, including the communities, we all have to put our hands together to find a way of solving that problem. There's the security aspect, which, if you like, maybe the law enforcement people will have to basically bring in. But there's technology aspect, which is basically where we come from. But there's also a lot of aspects coming from the communities themselves. I believe it is bringing all this together that will actually give us a solution to that.